You're listening to the Solano Paranormal Podcast, where the unknown meets investigation. From haunted locations to unexplained encounters, we dive deep into the mysteries that surround us. With your host, Mitch McLean, get ready to explore the truth beyond the veil.
Hello, and welcome back to Solano Paranormal. I'm Sarah Lee, and we are going to be stepping into the slow, strange spaces between our world and whatever lies on the other side. We're going deep into the lived experiences of sensitives, the people who feel, see, hear, or otherwise perceive things that most of us don't. I'll be defining the types, breaking down common experiences, and walking through how sensitives interact with the living and the dead. Whether you're an empath, a curious listener, or a skeptic, there's something here for you. In this episode, I'll ask you to listen with both compassion and curiosity. If you think you might be a sensitive, I'll offer a couple of tools, but please do more research on your own. If you're not, I'll outline how to responsibly work with and communicate with sensitives. Before we begin, dim the lights, put the phone on Do Not Disturb, and be ready to pause if anything feels too intense. So first of all, what do I even mean by sensitive? The term goes back to the late 1800s. During the height of spiritualism, a sensitive was anyone believed to pick up on impressions or energies. At its simplest, a sensitive person is someone who reports perception beyond the ordinary five senses. But that description really flattens an enormous spectrum. Sensitivity can be consistent and life-defining, or it can be intermittent after a trauma or an exposure of some type. Some people are professional level practitioners, and others call themselves naturally tuned in. Often you also hear of various types of sensitives called psychics. It's all how someone prefers to refer to themselves. Here's some key traits that I'll refer to throughout the show. Heightened empathy, feeling other people's emotions strongly. Extrasensory impressions, images, sounds, or knowing with no sensory source. Physical sensations that are tied to a location, object, or person. Persistent intuitive hits that later prove true. Spiritualism's mediums, early parapsychology researchers, and indigenous traditions described sensitives long before the modern labels. The vocabulary changes, but consistent reports persist. Sensations, visions, and impressions that come from outside the self. Now here's the big one, the many faces of sensitivity. I'll be breaking some of them down into types so we can talk about them, but there are many more than just these. So there's mediums. They receive messages from the deceased. Experiences can be auditory, voices, visual, mental images or visions, or sensory, a touch or smell. Mediumship varies in formality, from sitting in a living room giving a reading to platform mediumship or even trance work. Some mediums say it starts as a feeling or a memory that isn't theirs. Then a voice or image clarifies. They can get a name, a phrase, or a detail, like pearl ring or river at dawn. When they are checking with the client often reacts before the sentence can even be finished by the medium. So here's an example. A family-led search for a missing fisherman led to a medium's phrase, cap, the bridge, the trout. The family pushed further and identified the man in the photograph wearing the same cap, a detail that hadn't been made to the public. Investigators later found that the boat and the man's cap on a nearby shore. The medium's detail, however, narrowed down the search area and prompted a recheck of a map that produced the missing man. And then there's empaths. Empaths feel other people's emotional states intensely, sometimes even physically. They can be overwhelmed in crowds, feel drained, or wake up in moods that don't match their day. So if you think you might be an empath, think about when you enter a space and suddenly feel a heavy sadness with no cause. That may be emotional residue and not your own mood. And empaths can be both with human energy and emotions, with spirits' energy or emotions, or both. It depends on the empath. So here's a little tiny mini exercise. Close your eyes and think of a room that you love. Breathe deeply for 20 seconds. Now imagine you walk into a busy train station. Do you notice any changes in how you feel? Anything in your emotions, in your mood? That kind of jump in sensation is a tiny example of an empathic attunement. It's not exactly the same, but just to kind of give you an example. So here's a case file. An empath visited a battlefield reenactment and they reported an overwhelming stomach churning sorrow. Midway, he could no longer function. He had to step away, and after grounding exercises and speaking aloud to the energy, he was able to describe a specific regiment and name that matched a plaque nearby. The empathy seemed to be an unconscious connection to the long embedded emotional residue on the battlefield. Just note that not all empaths will get that much information. Sometimes it's just the feeling of emotion. It's different with everybody, but that's how it is with all of these sensitives. So next let's talk about the clairs. So there's a lot of clairs, but we're going to talk about just 4 of them: clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, and claircognizant. Like I said, there's many more. Google them and you can find them out. Most people have heard of clairvoyant. So the word clair, Clair, comes from the French word for clear. These are very specific sensory channels. Clairvoyant is clear seeing, like visions, mental pictures, or flashes. Clairaudient is clear hearing, such as voices, phrases that are not present physically and that others cannot hear, unless possibly they're sensitives as well. Clairsentient are clear feelings, tangible sensations often in the body. Claircognizant is clear knowing, sudden, unexplained knowing of information. And then there's healing medical sensitives. Some of them report sensoring illness or pain in others, feeling a limb ache that matches that of a patient's injury, or censoring a blocked organ as a heaviness. But never substitute a sensitive's impression for a medical diagnosis. Use them as prompts to encourage proper medical evaluation with your own medical team. That being said, not all healing medical sensitives work in the medical field. It's different for every person, like I keep saying. So an example is a paramedic empath who could predict patient outcomes because she felt ice spreading across her chest when a patient wasn't going to pull through. So she used this feeling to prioritize palliative care and discussion with the patient, if possible, or their family. And then there's psychometrists, object readers. Psychometry is the reading of the energy or history of an object. A watch might produce the impression of a military uniform. A locket might bring up the sense of maternity or mourning. Always make sure you ask the client about the object's provenance afterwards to avoid confirmation bias, whether you're the sensitive or somebody working with the sensitive. So perhaps a woman inheriting a pocket watch would bring it to a psychometrist, and they would describe waves, salt air, and an older brother urging someone to take care. Research could later uncover that that watch had belonged to a sailor who had vanished at sea. And now here's a really interesting one that a lot of people probably don't know about. The animal sensitives. They can understand and feel animal states, pain, fear, feelings, intention. Trainers and rescue workers can sometimes develop this sensitivity even if they've never had it before. Sometimes people have it but don't work with animals at all or own animals. Animal sensitives can be invaluable in working with search and rescue scenarios and the animals, and also assessing welfare of animals. But again, it needs to be combined with observation. So perhaps a rescue shelter is working with a trainer who just knew which dogs were aggressive versus frightened because of her sensitivity. Her assessments might match the behavior tests 80% of the time, and she would use touch and a calm voice to align the animal's energy and then guide the trainers in slow desensitization. This would allow them to be able to work with the animal and retrain them and make it possible for them to be rehomed versus what would happen with aggressive animals otherwise. All right. And then there's environmental and geometric sensitives. Mantic. Some people sense earth energies, ley lines, power spots, or nodes. This ties into dowsing, feng shui, and sacred place work. So you could have a geometric sensitive that would suggest moving your bed off a seam in the floor, citing a cold line that ran under the room. Maybe within a week, your sleep improved and nightmares decreased. Scientists will demand better data, but for you, the change might be life changing. And then others. There's also overlaps and syntheses. These categories aren't strict. Folks often share traits. An empath may also be a clairsentient. There are also syntheses, people whose senses merge, like seeing sounds. Synthesia can shape paranormal reports as well, because it's the hearing of color in a place. Remember, these are just frameworks. Most people are mixtures, and everybody is different. And if you're looking at yourself, you'll be different too. So, how do they experience the world? Let's get granular. What does this actually feel like minute to minute? They may have physical symptoms that could be tingling, pressure in the head or chest, sudden fatigue, pain, feelings of being touched, nausea, etc. So here's a small exercise. Close your eyes, imagine a moving train passing by. Notice any muscle responses that you have. Did you have any slight twitches? Did you feel, even though it was just imagining, did you feel the air rushing past you, even though there was no air moving? These are micro responses, and they kind of mimic how sensitive gets impressions, but it's not exactly the same, just to give you an idea. And then there's sensory phenomena. There's smells with no source, phantom footsteps, static in the ears. An example would be a sensitive walking into a house and immediately feeling a nauseous and a metallic taste. Later, they would learn that the house was a former factory with contamination, and the taste corresponded to lingering odors that were in the original factory. Maybe not currently being smelled in the home now, but were in the past. And then there's cognitive effects, memory bleed, which is receiving a memory that isn't theirs, intrusive images, and a sense of deja vu. Have you ever felt deja vu before? If so, let me know down in the comments. Any of the exercises we've done, also let me know how they felt down in the comments. So, an investigator could be receiving a clear image of a toddler hiding under a bed in an empty house. There is furniture and there is a bed in the house, but they have not gone through the entire house. They do not know it is there. Later on, it could be discovered that children toys were found under a bed that looked exactly like what they saw and where they saw it. So that would be an example. And then there's emotional blending and disassociation. This is confusion about which feelings are yours and your own. It is important to label when strong emotions arise. Mentally say, is this my emotion or not? It is a very quick practice that helps build boundary awareness for yourself. Very important. Many sensitives describe exhaustion after intense perception. That's why grounding and aftercare are crucial. So, how do they interact with the living? Being a sensitive doesn't happen in a vacuum. Most of their interaction happen with family, friends, clients, investigators, skeptics, and even random strangers. So let's cover some best practice from both sides. Consent and boundaries. If you are a sensitive, always ask permission before sharing any impressions about others, to themselves or to other people. So if you're in front of a group of people, make sure that they don't mind if you say it to everybody, or should they be pulled aside and said to just them, or do they not want to know at all? If you're an investigator, make sure you get written and verbal consent for readings during the investigation from the property owners or people who might be there at the time. You may get where they pick up on things that you want to document for your investigation, but maybe the homeowners don't want to know. Maybe if it's about one of them specifically, maybe they want to know, whatever comes up. Um, and if a sensitive is detecting something about a living person's trauma, you need to proceed gently. Um, you don't have to tell your team, you don't have to tell people, but you can let them know. And both you and your team can offer resources to help them out when appropriate. Um, when sensitives are working with paranormal teams, the structure of the investigation should have a sensitive define their intention during the investigation. Um, are they trying to get information or just be there as an investigator? There's some sensitives that don't want to put their information towards the investigation. They do not want to tell anybody what they found out. Um, they also need to know where the equipment is going to be placed near them. And then can they take their own notes, or do you need to offer them one of the team members to be a note taker for them? It depends on how they experience their abilities. They may not be able to take in the moment. So they might need, video equipment near them. They may need somebody to take notes to verify experiences that are happening. There may need to be certain types of equipment near them. Um, EVP readers, things like that. Um, an emergency buddy is really great to assign to them. If they don't already have a trusted person with them, like a friend or family member, or a particular person on the team that they like to stick to the most. Assign one of the team members, if they trust everybody, to be an emergency buddy. It's important in case they are jumped. Some sensitives allow it. Some sensitives do not, but it happens anyways. So it's important to have somebody there. Also, just in case they are feeling physical or emotional and it's too much for them, in case they need someone to talk to, they need someone to help them to ground, in case they need equipment to help verify the messages they are receiving. So if they've moved to a new area and equipment didn't get moved with them, they might need you to bring stuff. Um, we want to encourage the sensitives to give brief, time-stamped impressions to prevent post hoc fitting into events. And then here's an example of workflow. We don't want to make sensitives overdo it, and sensitives, you don't want to overdo it. So know your boundaries, know how long you can work for, and work with your team members. So an example might be a 5-minute baseline and taking notes, a 20-minute walkthrough with the team or a team member and the sensitive, a 10-minute debrief, and then some verification steps. Um, Sometimes you're at a location for hours and hours. And just because the rest of the team are able to stay there and investigate for hours, the sensitives may not. They may need multiple breaks, and give them those breaks. Let them take those breaks. If you're a sensitive, learn how long you can go. If you need to be done and leave for the night, go ahead. It's very important. Now, with some communication and ethics, um, for sensitives, it's recommended that you don't do cold reads while fishing for reactions or asking questions. You're not a character on TV, even though I really like to watch this show, Psych. You know, don't act like a TV character. You're trying to give real information, not accidentally pick up on stuff they might be saying, things you're seeing in the room. Make sure you're really focusing on the right information. If you don't know what psych is, it was a really funny show. A guy who acted like he was a psychic, pretended to be, but he actually was a room reader. So he was just doing cold reads of the room around him, objects in the room, people in the room, stuff like that. He was not psychic at all, but he made everybody believe he was. Uh, so also, if you're a sensitive, state confidence levels. I'm 40% sure versus I am certain. If you are certain, 90% sure, 100% sure. You need to make sure you have aftercare, sensitives. Grounding exercises. Learn as many grounding exercises as you can. Make sure you stay hydrated before, during, and after. Eat a light meal or snack before and after, based on what your physical symptoms are. If you're somebody that you know you get nauseous, then maybe you won't eat before, but you'll have a snack afterwards. And then afterwards, debrief with a trusted partner or with the whole team, depending on what you feel comfortable with. Interacting with spirits. Now, this could be some of the more difficult part of the work. Direct interaction with spirits, which could include detection, communication, negotiation, and release. Not necessarily all of it. Every sensitive is different. Like I keep saying, you're going to hear me say it like a broken record. So some of the types of contact, direct communication would be intentional messages to and from the spirits, a form of mediumship usually. Residual phenomenon. It's a replay of events without intelligent response. So this is what we talk about residual spirits, where it's like a movie that's being played over and over and over, a VHS tape that has recorded. We've mentioned before in podcast, really big around things like limestone, crystal deposits, things like that, water. So you're not going to get much interaction. You're not going to get any interaction. You're just going to see, hear, feel, whatever. Poltergeist and intelligent activity. It can be interactive and it can sometimes be mischievous or violent. So do be careful. And then apparitions and EVPs. Visual figures or recorded voices. So here's an example of a residual. A family purchased an old farmhouse. At night, they heard a repeating series of footsteps and the sound of a baby carriage, same hour, same pattern. Investigators categorized it as residual. It played back like a loop with no sign of conscious interaction. They researched and documented what they could about the incident to be better informed of the type of spirit. How it might have been felt by the sensitive is they might have been able to, um, the others might have heard footsteps, but maybe the sensitive could hear the crying in a baby carriage or the cooing of a baby in a baby carriage. They might have, felt some emotion of the baby, or, footsteps might be people walking around, adults or older children, so they might feel their feelings. But it's residual, it's just on repetition over and over and over. So they're just going to feel it or hear it over and over and over, but they may get more than others. Another example, a medium receives a repetitive line, call her Lily, call her Lily, call her Lily, repeated morning, midday, and night. The team later, upon research, finds garden markers with Lily on a family plot. The repetition helped focus the search to find this family marker and gravesite, and then the spirit was able to later move on. The rest of the team did not hear Call Her Lily, only the medium. It was not caught on EVPs or anything like that. So that's one that you don't have evidence to back it up from your electrical equipment, but research was able to back it up, and they were actually able to find um, the garden marker, grave marker to back it up. So here's some protective protocols. Mental practices. Do some grounding, shielding, setting intent. Use simple language. I ask that only honest, kind presence speak today. Or spirits, whatever word you want to use. Sometimes people will use physical practices depending on their culture, or if they also believe in witchcraft or something like that. So they may use salt lines or salt circles. Some of it is symbolic. Some of it is psychology. Some of it, they really feel, that it is working, like when witches cast spells. Team rules. So not just the medium, but the entire team. Do not antagonize presences. Log everything. Do not provoke. There's no need to provoke. And when you do start provoking, you're more than likely going to start getting more negative entities, or you're going to irritate a good entity into having more negative responses. There's no reason to antagonize and provoke, whether you're a team or whether you're a medium. If you're a medium, you shouldn't really have to antagonize and provoke either. They should just be giving you information. And if they're not giving you information, then you don't need that information. If the team is not getting, scientific data on the devices, then they don't need that information. So since we're, talking about, grounding and stuff, here's a protection exercise. So take 3 deep breaths. And imagine roots going down into the earth from your body, if you want to imagine them coming out of your feet. And then say, we invite only loving energy. We set a clear boundary. Do not let in spirits that you do not want to let in. Do what you need to set boundaries for protection. It's important. Um, Speaking respectfully to stubborn energies, back to the provoking. There's no reason to be a jerk to spirits for any reason. So offer acknowledgement, not mockery. Ask them questions, give them feedback. There's no need to make fun of them. There's no need to provoke them. That's just not cool. I mean, would you do that to your friend? Don't do it. If a presence becomes attached to an object, um, try to see if you can tell if the entity is good or bad. And if it's good, then there's not anything you really need to do with it. If it's bad, then you can look into sealing the object if you know how. If you do not do it, and escalate the item to either like a trained practitioner or clergy or a researcher that would know what to do with it. Uh, Again, for residual hauntings, no negotiations is possible. Just document and move on. If you're negotiating, not all, like I mentioned before, not all sensitives are going to be able to negotiate and help them move on and that kind of thing. That's just how it is. But if you are able to, just, you know, negotiate. If you can't, move on. For residuals, don't even try. You're wasting your time. Um, so, some other ethical considerations with spirits: consent for channeling. You can ask the spirits for consent just as much. They'll a lot of times come to sensitives without asking for consent and give sensitives information. But if you're trying to channel, you're trying to get information, ask for consent. Ask them to give you the information. Don't demand it. If they're giving you information for a live person, I've mentioned it before, but again, consent. Ask the living person if they want the message. Ask the living person if you could share the message with other people. Um, don't speak for a spirit without being able to corroborate. Don't assume you know what the spirit wants. Don't tell everybody. Don't try to guess. Don't assume. Um, don't try to fix a problem that isn't a problem to them. You don't want to change things or make things worse for them if they're not expecting it. So, just make sure you're not telling people what you think it wants people to know. Don't assume a spirit wants to be moved on. Talk to it if you can, if that's what you're able to do. Spirits can be exploitative. If they give exploitative requests, decline them and report. They may be asking for an action on their behalf that you don't feel comfortable with. They may be asking you to do something bad to somebody else. They may be asking you to tell somebody something bad. Um, that may be one that you don't even want to ask the person if they want to know and ask them for consent. You just may not want to tell them if it's something not nice. They may ask you to, do things with, like dig up my body and move me here. You legally cannot do that, so just decline and report it. And when I say report it to, like, if you're on an investigation with your team, just add it to the team's report, but don't do it. So now we're going to talk a little bit about debunking versus believing. So this is a hard balancing act. There's critical thinking and open-mindedness, and we want to have both, especially paranormal investigators, and a lot of sensitives that work with paranormal investigators already understand this. So hopefully it's not something that you guys need to disagree on. Um, if you do, then you need to have a good discussion on, um, why you're on the team and what you're both doing and that kind of thing. So in investigations, sensitives are not evidence on their own. It's not that we don't believe them. It's just that we need more evidence to back it up. It's kind of like they can pick up on the signal, but we need to corroborate it with our equipment and see if we can get EVPs, see if we can get, if the spirit will interact with our equipment. Can we get something on camera, on video recording? what can we get that helps back up what they're seeing? You can test with double blind readings and independent verification. Do you know more than one sensitive? Can you have two sensitive come in at different times that can both get the same readings? Again, still it would be nice to have evidence to go with it, but that would be like a double blind reading, is for them to both pick up on the same thing. Even better if they don't know each other. If they do, at least try to make sure neither of them know anything about the property or ghosts or any, whatever's going on. Uh, Corroboration really, really matters. Try to press for verification when you can. Some things you can use for verification are time-stamped notes. So either if somebody's taken written notes, if they can look at their watch and write down the times. If you're on a camera, a video recording, or an EVP, make verbal notes of the note and the time. Using audio and video equipment to catch what you can, both if you can catch whatever is going on with the sensitive, but also if there's any equipment that are also being used at the same time that are having reactions as well. The equipment responses. Third-party witnesses, if there's people there that aren't part of your team that can verify, the information that they saw and heard, without being, engaged in the group as well. So not just a family member that's tagged along with the team, but maybe like the owners of the property, or, somebody else that might be there, just checking out. Sometimes teams will let people come and investigate with them just to see how it is to go on an investigation. It just depends on the team. So you can also try for repeatability. If they leave and come back on different days, can they keep talking to the same spirits, getting the same responses? And doing independent checks if it's at all possible. You can see for yourself if you can feel or hear anything. Sometimes not sensitive people can still feel and hear things. If you can do some research and find out information that verifies what they're, hearing, seeing, whatever, that helps as well. Um, so for, debunking versus believing, ask the sensitives about their accuracy rates and encourage them to record sessions, whether you're hiring somebody to work one-on-one with just you and yourself over a personal issue, whether it's somebody wanting to join the team or somebody who's already on the team that now wants to discuss that they're sensitive. Discuss it with them. Find out more information. Do they have any non-family member and friend um, people that could, back up and verify what they've experienced with them? Again, we mentioned this before, but being careful of how the person is doing a cold reading. They should not be asking you leading questions, and you should not be giving them much information at all. Uh, if they say something that is true, you can verify it if you know it, but don't verify it with 3 long sentences explaining something, because then that gives them more information. I'm talking about sensitives here. I believe in sensitives. I know sensitives. I can be a sensitive myself. I can talk about that a little bit at the end. But there are a lot of fakes out there. There's a lot of phonies. And so what we're wanting to do is make sure that we're not buying into these fakes and phonies. And that's just this little bit of information here. It's not because I'm saying sensitives, I don't believe you, people do this to the sensitives. This is just, even as a sensitive myself, I'm skeptical of other sensitives at times. So when they're doing a cold reading, don't give them too much information, because that's what a lot of the people who are phonies and stuff is they get enough information, or they, lead you with, is it a J? Do you have a J name in your family? Oh, you have an Uncle John. Is John alive or dead? Like, those are leading questions, even though they don't Jay, it doesn't seem like big questions, but those are big questions that can take them very far and make you have a lot of feelings and none of it be true. So just really take that into consideration. S- Sensitives out there, I love you all. I really do love you. I'm just trying to protect us all. Um, be careful of confirmation bias, selective memory, sleep phenomenon, and hallucinations due to stress and substances. Confirmation bias, that is kind of like if you've watched some of the TV shows. I'm not saying this is true of all paranormal investigators or all TV shows, but when you hear and see them like, "Oh, we got this hit. Oh, we hear this voice." I'm gonna mention one that I'm not gonna name names the other day, but was very skeptical of the episode because they were like, "Oh, the the box was giving out ja, 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 and they're like, "Oh, they must be talking about Justin, must be talking about Justin," which was somebody related to the property or the people or something like that, and then the box started saying, "Just, just, just," and they're like, "Oh, it really is, they're really talking about Justin," and then they switched to another camera where somebody else has a different device, the Oculus, that gives the one word at a time, and that was saying, in," and they're like, "Oh, it really is Justin. They're talking about Justin because 'cause we're getting and just, and the box is getting in," and it's like, that kinda feels like a long stretch to me. I really did not feel that. I didn't at all. As an investigator myself, I thought that was just too big of a stretch. So they were kind of using that confirmation bias because they knew of somebody named Justin. Again, I can't remember if it was the property owners or family member of the property owners or something. It had something to do with the property. Big stretch in my opinion. And that was some of their biggest investigation or biggest evidence in the episode. And I didn't like it. Right now, talking about it, I'm getting the chills, like not the good chills, the bad chills. Like I don't like it. Nope. Mm-mm, not good. So we don't want to deal with confirmation bias. Again, selective memory. Maybe somebody is just, you know, um, they're having issues with like their memory and picking, bits and pieces, or maybe they're getting lots of memories, but they're only selecting certain pieces and giving to people. So people are not getting the full truth because they're only getting pieces. So maybe they're getting these pieces and thinking, this is what it means. But really, if they had all the information, all the pieces, it really means this. Sleep issues, hallucinations due to stress or substance use. Uh, that can happen. People, sensitives or not, can see and feel and hear. This also doesn't talk about mental health. Are there known mental health issues? I'm not saying you can't have mental health issues or do substances or have stress or have sleep issues and not still be a sensitive. You, but keep that in mind. And if you're somebody that's working with somebody and you know that these are active issues, keep that in mind. Uh, Psychology plays a big part in all of this. So, I actually was listening something my husband had on the TV earlier today, was talking about how there's, some study being done that people who are on, hallucinogens are more likely to see spirits. Now, I was walking through the room and I didn't get the whole thing, and I wanna go back and investigate that more on my own. Because I wanna know, were they talking about while they're hallucinating, or are they talking about just in general, like they take mushrooms occasionally and in between they see spirits when they didn't before? Kinda curious. There's a lot of science and psychology and paranormal thoughts and conspiracies about hallucinogens, LSD, mushrooms, DMT, the things people experience on it, the things people feel after, all that kind of stuff. Fascinating. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and move on, but that's all fascinating stuff to think about, maybe research on your own. And why did the conversations need to be both sides of the sensitives and the skeptics? Sensitives are human and they are fallible. They try their best, but no one's perfect. Skepticism protects against fraud. Openness allows for genuine phenomenon to be explored. So before an investigation, ask the sensitive if they are able to state one object or detail that they can confidently describe that can be checked out later. A color, a name, a physical object. Can it be found in research later? Can it be found in the house while they're investigating or property? Um, that kind of thing. Is there a purple room? Is there a old-fashioned roll top desk, something that they wouldn't know before going into the property. Don't ask them if they were at the walkthrough, don't or seen or heard anything about the walkthrough, don't ask them when you're going into the investigation about something like that, because they might have picked up on something, even if they don't realize it from the walkthrough conversation. Make sure it's either before the walkthrough or make sure it's something that couldn't have been known from the walkthrough. Again, stuff they couldn't research ahead of time, perhaps. So if it's something like, the Winchester Mystery House, we all know, about that. So if they're like walking into it going, oh, this involves a gun. Yeah. Oh, this involves her having issues with the spirits beyond. We know. So we need something more concrete, something different. So if it's research based, it's got to be something not easily found and nothing they could have researched ahead of time. So maybe family history that wasn't online or something like that. And it's a practice for both accountability and confidence. Some ethical red flags are if they ask for money for closure demands. So if they want money at the end for giving you the information. Now, this is different than if you hire a sensitive upfront. That's your choice. You know you're paying them. You don't know what you're going to get. That's on you. But this is if, we go through everything and then at the end they're like, "Oh, if you want this information, you need to pay for it." Or if, you want me to tell you about your house, you need to pay me for it. Whether they're making the team pay, whether they're trying to make the property owners pay, whatever it is, be careful of that. Big red flag. Predictions of harm without referral, um, and then pressuring clients to act. You know, clients, there should be no pressure from the team, from a sensitive, from anybody. There should never be any pressure on the clients or anything. Predictions of harm without referral, you know, it just, why would you don't want to refer somebody that's, that wants to hurt you or whatever. It's, stupid. Um, so an example of when you might want a sensitive would be, you feel terrible in your grandmother's house, and sometimes you taste smoke, but there's no fire. That could be a residual scent trigger tied to a memory, not necessarily your memory, but a memory of the home. It could be of your memory too, and you just don't remember it, but generally memory of the home. Just in case it is your memory, try journaling each time the sensation occurs. Note the time, the location, and what people were there. If it points to a physical source, test for carbon monoxide or other things, gas, stuff like that. Always rule out physical causes. And if not, consider a gentle investigation with a sensitive and or paranormal team, and sometimes even a historian, depending on how old the home might be. Um, so if you are developing and managing a sensitivity, I'm just going to go over a few little tools for you here. Again, research, Google, whatever. Find out more information. Lots of books, lots of stuff you can do. Um, there's groups out there on social medias. So you're not alone. You're not alone. You can find people. You can find information. Don't be scared. If you're scared, try to work with that feeling specifically. Try to work on the anxiety and do more calming things. So if you want to develop your sensitivity, manage it better, um, those are some things you could do. So daily, I would recommend a 5-minute morning grounding. Do some breathing for 5 minutes. You don't have to do a full meditation, but breathe in, breathe out for 5 minutes. A good breathing is like the 4-4-4. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. And while you're doing that, for the grounding part, you can imagine your energy going down into the earth. So if you're on your back, the energy can come from there. If you're sitting up, it can come from your feet or your bottom. If you are wanting to be more extreme with the visual, you can think of your body growing roots and down into the earth. Both of those are very grounding. If possible, sit or stand with your feet or yourself on the ground, on grass, dirt, whatever, not cement, not in your house. If you're sitting on those, that's a blocker. You got to go through it. And then nightly, try to do some journaling of impressions, feelings you might have gotten throughout the day that didn't necessarily match up with what you were doing in the moment, or just how you felt during the day. Just regular journaling. That's good too. A weekly practice. Controlled exercises, such if your sensitivity is psychometry, then hold an unknown object and write impressions and then talk to the person. You could do this with friends and family members, and talk to the person about it. Just make sure it's not something you already know of the friend or family members. Have them bring something to you that you don't already know they own. You could do it places. You could be out somewhere, pick up something at a store, hold on to it, and then, you can do a recording really quick into your phone or type into your phone real quick. It doesn't have to be long, just a few impressions. It could be like 5 descriptive words. There's lots of other things for, if you're an empath, you can work on feeling and then blocking emotions and energy. If you're an empath, you don't have to let that energy in. Block it. So you could work on some blocking. One good one for that is to imagine, kind of like if you've ever used the term personal bubble. You can imagine your favorite color or a gold light or a silver light, shiny light, rainbow light, whatever, encasing your body, the outside of your body, kind of like an aura. But you're not playing with your aura right now. You're just encasing yourself in that line. And then you're putting the intentions into it being protection. I am cutting myself off at the moment. I am protecting myself. I am grounding myself. I'm taking a moment to myself, do some breathing. Again, I'm not good at meditation, so I do more of the breathing stuff. And then you could be done. You can either try to keep that line around you to try to protect yourself throughout the whole day, or you can loosen up a little bit and you can think of it like a breath. Like, if you're around people that are stressing you out, pull it in tighter to you to protect you better. If you're around good, happy people, you can let it out a little bit. So that's one I like. And then for other sensitivities, like I said, there's a lot of good books and people and sites and groups. And so there's a lot out there that you can find. Practice safety and boundaries. Always anchor your body. So like I was talking about the imagery of a rooted tree or your energy going into the earth. It can also be jewelry, or some kind of object, if you're a male and not a female. I did not address this previously. Sensitives could be any gender. It does not matter. So when I see jewelry, it could be a watch, it could be cufflinks, it could be anything. It could be a necklace. It doesn't have to be jewelry. It could be clothing you're wearing. Just use it as a physical anchor. So if you're having feelings, if you feel unsafe, if you feel like your boundaries are being crossed, pull yourself back into that anchor. Look at your bracelet. Think about your bracelet. Touch your bracelet. Tell yourself, I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm safe. So you can use objects as well. You don't have to just use, you know, um, what you're thinking about. You don't have to use thought process. Well, you're using thought process. Imagination. You can use physical items as well. Um, and then, build your resources. I keep mentioning all of that, so I'm not going to mention it again. Online groups, people, books. Also keep with this resource building, keep a sensitivity log. So, like kind of a journal, but, where you only discuss your sensitivity. That way you can log things, keep track of things, notice if there's differences, notices if there's similarities, try to track patterns, things like that. That'll help you out immensely to help you learn and figure out how you're using your sensitivity or what your sensitivity is. Maybe you think that you're an empath and you don't realize that you're hearing things, or maybe you don't realize that you can feel stuff from objects. You think that you're just getting energy off of people, but you actually were getting energy off of these objects as well. So maybe, you could be multiple things. Um, get paired up with a trusted verifier. So it doesn't have to be a mentor, um, just somebody who can sit with you and verify how you're feeling. So you can have a friend or family member that you trust, that will just sit and verify, you're here, you're safe. They can verify how you're feeling. If you're saying like, I'm hearing this, I'm seeing this, maybe they can take notes. That's how they're your verifier, taking notes for you. Recording you, maybe you can grab somebody and be like, hey, I got this real quick. Grab your phone, record me. It could be something as easy as that. If needed, don't worry about needing to seek professional therapy if experiences become distressing too much, if they're starting to hurt your own emotions, if they're starting to hurt your own mental health. It is okay. There is nothing wrong with that. Seek therapy. There's nothing wrong with therapy. Now, as to whether or not you talk about your sensitivity, that just depends. There's lots of therapists that are sensitive. There's lots of therapists that believe in sensitivities. There are some that don't. So it just depends on how comfortable you feel. Feel out your therapist. See if you feel that you can trust talking to them without them thinking you're Looney Tunes, because you're not. Um, and go from there. If you feel like you need to bounce around to a few different therapists to find one, sometimes you can pre-interview them. You can have a phone call and ask them about their thoughts and feelings on things. I know it's hard to get in therapy nowadays. I know the mental health field, especially here in America, I don't know about everywhere else, can be so difficult to get help. But just do it, do it. If you need it, push, advocate for yourself. Do what you need to do. There's so many options nowadays. Do it. Don't feel like you're crazy pants trying to do it. Um, and research and find a mentor if you can. There are people out there that'll mentor you for free. Um, there are people that'll try to charge you, and I'd be very cautious of anybody who tries to charge you. Get lots of references, lots of references. Myself, I would never take anybody who would charge me to mentor me. Um, but definitely, it is possible for you to research. It may not be one-on-one in person. It may be somebody that you have to talk to online. Um, so just keep that in mind. What is your comfortable, are you comfortable with different types of technology? Um, and then I'm going to keep giving these grounding things because grounding is important. Another one here, another guided grounding, feet flat on the floor, take 3 long breaths. Imagine roots from your feet to the earth. Pull any coursing energy down and let it settle. Place your hand on your sternum and say, I am here, I am grounded.